Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, it's my buy, track and sell in terms of players ahead of game week 4. Of course, we'll be looking at the medium to short-term fixtures anyway up until game week 8 in these suggestions. Of course, if you enjoy the content, guys, do remember to hit that thumbs up. And if you're new around here and want to see more, do consider hitting that subscribe button for me. But let's jump into the first individual here. Now, he made my track, buy and sell video last week, and that is Nicholas Jackson. I think 132,000 of you putting more trust and faith in the man is certainly going to warrant returns over these next 5 weeks. That fixture run looks fantastic. I was a little bit disappointed to only get one attack in return from him at Luton, as I did think that was probably going to be one of the best fixtures that we get. In terms of these next run, though, the oppositions, yes, they're of course much more formidable than Luton. We do know that, but I still think at £7.1 million, he looks like a fantastic option into that Chelsea attack. So I still consider him a buy. I think it's not until we get to maybe game week 6 or 7 that I feel like the run of fixtures has probably gone by us before we consider not buying him anymore. But very, very happy as an owner with him in that short to medium term. Then we can have a look at, of course, a colleague of his in Raheem Sterling. Absolutely phenomenal performance against Luton as well, but he doesn't play Luton every week. And I think a few other content creators on multiple platforms have highlighted that his XG per 90 isn't particularly strong. He has only got 0.29 in terms of that underlying data. His expected goal involvement is a little bit better, of course, with that 0.47. 2 goals and 1 assist so far. I'm absolutely not trying to condone him as an asset. I think he is a fantastic option and will be across this run of fixtures, just like Nicholas Jackson is. My only concern with him is that it's the consistency. He's got the explosivity. Is he consistent enough? Maybe we find that actually Jackson and Sterling equal each other out to some degree over these next 5 weeks and get similar kind of returns. Obviously, we won't know that until game week 8, but maybe something to consider if you only want to buy one attacker. It could work out that both of them equal each other. Then we look at the next individual who I think is very hot on many people's radars and, of course, is a bit of a hot topic in terms of who you go for as opposed to the previous suggestion. So Sterling or Maddison is probably one of the hot topical debates of this week. And honestly speaking, I think that Maddison makes sense, although it does depend on a couple of options here. I'll caveat his selection with, I suppose, those two situations. And one is budget. Maddison, of course, is £0.6 million more expensive than Sterling. So the first thing to do is always look at your team over the next 3 to 4 game weeks and really decide on whether that £0.6 million needs to be used in a different area of the pitch. If it does, then maybe Sterling is the route that you need to go. If not, I do think Maddison slightly edges it for me in terms of the selection. Of course, the second reason is the wildcard opportunity or the wildcard window. If you're going to go for a wildcard in, say, as early as game week 8, then maybe you can hold fire with Maddison and look at bringing him in from that Luton fixture when Spurs' fixtures get really, really strong. If, on the other hand, you're looking at more of a later wildcard and your team is looking really strong over the next, say, 5, 6, maybe even 7 game weeks, then potentially Maddison is the better long-term hold. And of course, his expected goal involvement as well is a little bit higher than Sterling's. Across, when you look at heat maps and other things, his involvement is absolutely massive, integral, I would say, to the way Spurs are playing at the moment in this new Postecoglou system. So I think really when you look at it, I'm making a very strong argument for Maddison over Sterling here, but the reality is it is up to you. They're very, very close. Their numbers are really, really good. I just think Sterling offers the explosivity in short, and Maddison offers you a bit more consistency and involvement, if I'm honest. So great assets nonetheless. Both of them look like really strong options. Moving into the track options now then, we do have this man, Jarrod Bowen, first up. Now, West Ham having a really, really kind of awful run, I suppose, in terms of opening fixtures. When you look at Chelsea, Brighton, you've got City, Liverpool in there in game week 5 and 6, including Newcastle in game week 8. They pretty much just went under the radar in terms of content creators suggesting movements for them. But I think this man has really showcased, if West Ham continue to play a counter-attacking style of play, at £7 million, he could really be a very, very formidable midfield asset. Expected goal involvement per 90 of 0.76. And like I said, I think this lower possession-based approach from David Moyes this season so far seems to really work out in their favour. And I really do think that Bowen's going to kick on even more so against Luton in game week 4. My only concern for him is, again, that short to medium term fixture run just looks a little bit difficult with the likes of City, Liverpool and Newcastle between now and game week 8. So something to consider, and just for me stays on the track approach for now. Moving into Diaby next up, an individual that I think absolutely could warrant a place in our teams, almost above Ollie Watkins as well. He's 1.4 million cheaper than the Aston Villa forward and offering a very, very, very good competitive amount of data here. We've got 0.52 expected goal involvement, already scored 2 goals and got an assist for himself in those opening 3 games. And again, it just showcases the plethora of options we have in this midfield area now. We've got another budget enabler coming through here, and again, just another option to think about. For me personally, I think when you look at the fixtures here from Liverpool away, Chelsea away, Brighton at home, it is a little bit tricky over the next 4. So I think really from game week 8 onwards is when I would truly consider him. And like I said, probably even an alternative to Ollie Watkins, saving yourself that money, that extra 1.4 million, and having a very strong route into an Aston Villa attacker. So certainly somebody I want to track and keep an eye on over the next few weeks. Moving then into an individual and I guess a club that we know are going to be firm on our radars this season, achieving a fantastic top 4 finish last year under Eddie Howe. Absolutely great achievement for them. We know that Isak as well had some really great moments of in that kind of number 9 role in a Newcastle shirt, and I do think that's going to continue this season. There's a couple of things to caveat with him, and that's why he's kind of made the track and not the buy just yet. Is one, it's the fixtures. He's got Brighton away, and Brentford at home in the next 2, which I don't think are very, very easy fixtures. It's only really from game week 6 that I would consider a kind of real strong bullish approach for him. My concern with him is really coming down to the X minutes. It's the 70 to 75 minutes per game thing where Callum Wilson clearly needs to be kept happy, and maybe we see a bit of a change in the Champions League, and maybe Wilson does play that number 9 role in the European fixtures, and if he does, then I think that makes even more of a stronger argument to probably bring Isak into our teams, because not only will he not be maybe at risk with those European fixtures, but it means he will probably solidify that number 9 slot in the Premier League, which is where we want him to be. So something to consider, and again, the numbers are really, really strong for him. Maybe an alternative for the likes of Ollie Watkins. If you went for Diaby as an attacker and you wanted to diversify in a couple of weeks' time, maybe this is the individual that we go for. Of course, then next up we have another colleague of his in Kieran Trippier, the captain of Newcastle United. Unfortunately, not so far putting out the numbers and the data that he did last season. You know, he had an absolute fantastic opening season and campaign for Newcastle United. He hasn't really hit the ground running, but of course Newcastle's fixtures have been a little bit trickier, so I can understand why that's happened. That being said, though, I'm still not seeing enough just yet to warrant bringing him in as early as game week 5. I know some individuals are trying to get ahead of the curve with him, but I just feel like with European fixtures, midweek cup fixtures going on as well, I just want to hold fire with spending £6.5 million on a defender like him, when again, we have so many midfielder options that are at that similar price point and offering a very, very strong amount of data behind them. So only creating 0.17's worth of expected goal involvements, even with that big chance and 9 chances created, it's still not warranted or turned into FPL points yet. So again, it's a track for me, not necessarily a purchase just yet, but absolutely need to be aware of those fixture swings coming up. Next up on the list, then, we can look at a more of a budget-enabling option, and that is Matty Cash of Villa. Of course, coming on the back of 2 goals from Burnley, maybe a little bit knee-jerky to put him on the video today. But honestly, when you look at the numbers at £4.6 million, Unai Emery as well has come out and said quite clearly that he can play in that winger role and definitely looking like a kind of a quite versatile player now on that right-hand side for Emery. So maybe we see him playing a more progressive role. And when you look at the numbers at £4.6 million, 0.81 expected goal involvement, really strong data there to back up and warrant his 229,000 manager transfers in and warrant his price rise up, of course, from 4.5 to 4.6 million. Again, though, it's just similar to Diaby. I think it's a bit of a wait and see. These next 4 fixtures aren't fantastic. And then we look at that Wolves from game week 8 onwards, and it really starts to brighten up for Villa. So I think let's just wait and see with him, but absolutely could be an easy Gabriel replacement for almost a like for like in terms of budget. Or even potentially just a new budget enabler for the likes of Reece James or Shaw if you went up a little bit more in terms of your initial spend on your defence. So fantastic asset, absolutely no doubt about it. And that kind of moves us perfectly into the first sell of the video, and it is this man Luke Shaw. Of course, we didn't really see much of him in terms of those opening game weeks anyway, in terms of his attacking threat. And United, as predicted by me at the beginning of the season, I didn't think we were going to keep many clean sheets, and we haven't kept one except for the first game of the season where we were very, very lucky to keep that one. I mean, Wolves should have scored. They should have had a penalty in that game as well. And then we looked the second best team against Tottenham. And of course, the opening 4 minutes of the Forest game meant a complete clean sheet wipeout and actually 2 goals conceded in the opening 4 minutes. So, I mean, even if you were an owner and he wasn't injured, I think he would be considered a sell at this point anyway. Just when you look at these next 4 fixtures, or even 5 fixtures, with Arsenal, Brighton and Brentford included in there, I honestly can't see a continuation again of clean sheets happening. And this is why I mentioned Onana being a bit of a risky pick at 5 million. He has done no better than some of the budget 4.5 million options. And across those 5 game weeks, or 3 game weeks so far out of the initial 5, like I say, we've only seen 1 clean sheet. So I think United defence are absolutely a sell at this point. I don't think there's any faith in us as a backline. And of course, Luke Shaw being injured as well just adds insult to that injury, really. Then we can have a look at the next individual. It is João Pedro. Unfortunately for owners, he has been benched again. And it just looks like when you've got your main competitor as in Ciso being long-term injured and you still haven't been able to make the starting 11, I think that's a telltale sign for me that De Zerbi just wants him to bed in a little bit more. He still wants him to, understand the philosophy that De Zerbi is working under. And he really is not, he's not very shy, right, in terms of benching players that have got that raw talent and great attacking ability. So for that reason, I think at 5.5 million, if you've got money in the bank, especially from all those budget midfielder enablers, it's quite comfortable and easy to move from João Pedro now at 5.5 million up to the likes of Jackson or even Isak if you've got a few million spare, right? I honestly think there are better options than him without playing the game of kind of De Zerbi roulette now, right? So I think it's a must sell for me. Then we move into the third sell option here. It's his colleague Matoma. Of course, still 43.3% owned. So he's got a massive chunk of kind of ownership battling, I suppose, to contend with if you're selling him. But at £6.6 million, you can free up some money there, go a little bit sideways to somebody like Burmo at the similar price point. If you've got a bit more money in the bank, you can go up to Sterling with him or even as far as Maddison. And I think the argument is there because of the fixtures. When you look at that, it's just a really bad turn for Brighton now. They've put out some fantastic numbers against formidable and kind of average opposition so far. And then, of course, with European fixtures on the horizon for them, as well as midweek cup fixtures, is there going to be rotation under Zerbi? Yes, I think we can say yes to that. And also as well, the fixtures in this medium term just don't look strong enough to warrant keeping him. So for me, I think he's a sell, and I'm not really surprised that 173,000 managers have already made that decision. And then finally, I think a little bit of a controversial one last week where I was saying that he was a possible track to sell. And I think now he does have to just move down from track to that sell period, because I sold him for Foden last week. I was a little bit nervous that against Fulham at home he could do something. But honestly, after seeing him only put out a 2-pointer and the numbers just still not being there, I think it's time to now ship him out. At £8 million, he's not the Martinelli of last season when he cost only 6.5. That's a massive extra cost of £1.5 million that's only warranted a 10-point yield in terms of returns over the last 3 weeks. It's just not good enough in terms of that amount of money spent when there's so many good budget options, right? So I think his sell is absolutely warranted at this point. It worked out for me last week going sideways to Foden a little bit. And then, I think in the short term here, yes, there's Everton away and Bournemouth away in game week 5 and 7, which could turn out to be mega hauls. But I honestly think, again, that when we're talking about consistency and short to medium term fixtures, there are just better options that are not only cheaper, but also just have better fixtures out there. So that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you found this content useful. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of it, and of course what your plans are for this game week. I'll be putting out a team selection video at some point in this week as well, talking about how I got on in game week 3 and my plans for game week 4, so look out for that one. If you do want to get notified of that, then please do consider subscribing to me for all the future content as well. And of course I will see you in a deadline stream on Friday evening as well. So thanks very much for watching and tuning in, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.